Korg brand because that's been a special instrument and a special company to me for so many years, and I think there's a very amazing future of creating instruments. So it's a great time to be alive as a keyboardist. I wish I could stay around forever to experience what the next generation will see. So this is Jordan Rudess from Dream Theater here in Seoul, Korea, but I've been playing with Dream Theater for about the last 28 years. It's been an awesome ride, as they say. Great experience, and we just love, going around the world and sharing the music, and it's been a privilege and an honor to do that. Over the many years, after I finished, or I should say left, from classical music, I was going to be a classical musician. I was studying classical piano, went to Juilliard. But somewhere along the line, I discovered the Mini-Moog synthesizer. That led me down a different road. And from that point, I felt like electronic instruments, even in those days, were expressive. Like to me, turning a knob was kind of like a cool, continuous, expressive experience. Some of my colleagues at the time would say, oh, but there's no velocity or no touch on the keyboard. I would go, yeah, okay, but check it out. You can move this wheel or you can move this knob. So we've seen that, grow and change, and I followed that belief that electronics could be something that would be extremely expressive and very connected to who we are as human beings. So now I feel like we're at a time where, in many ways, the electronic instruments and the digital instruments have surpassed even acoustic instruments. I know some people might find that a difficult concept, but we're really able to make instruments that respond so accurately to your touch. So I've enjoyed working with all the different kinds of controllers that are out there. Everything from, of course, my own, live performance instrument, like with Dream Theater, like the Korg Kronos 3, which is incredible, thanks to the developments of technology. And then one more thing to say about that, which is that the new development of AI, although very controversial and presses a lot of buttons on people we know, I think it's the most powerful technology to ever happen, and that really changes everything. So it's something that I'm really keeping my eye on and I'm involved in to try to help to steer it in directions that would be positive for musicians. Yes, so I've been involved with Korg for many, many years, starting way back when I was a product specialist for Korg, and I was working with the M1 instrument. And that was an incredible instrument because those were the days when all of a sudden we were able to have actual sampled sounds along with some synthesis, and we would hear like a really natural piano or a natural choir kind of sound. That was the beginning of it. It was super exciting. And in those days, I really felt like when I was performing that I could rely on one keyboard and I would really learn how to work that keyboard and get the most out of it. Where some keyboard players, if they played in a band or solo, would think, oh, I need this kind of keyboard for the bell sound and this kind of keyboard for the string sound and another one for the piano, etc. I was always like, well, I'm going to really learn how this thing works and I'm going to apply myself and get the maximum out of it. So those were the days when I started to work for Korg that I really felt that way very strongly. So I followed it all through the M series, the T series, the O1W, the Oasis, which at that point things are all of a sudden like this is incredible because you could start having lots of different splits and layers and a lot of effects. And then, of course, the Oasis turned into the Kronos. And now we're at the Kronos 3. It's an incredible time because when I'm on stage, like with Dream Theater, and that Kronos is programmed to do, let's say, the 500 different patches in a night, that I can play my strings, my pianos, my organs, my choirs. There's no glitch or there's no problem switching from one patch to another. It's all seamless and it's all smooth, and I can have big layers of all the sounds that I want. Even back to the Oasis, which was a great instrument. In those days, when you would switch patches, would stop momentarily and then go to the next sound. So I would have to rely on like cymbals, other instruments to carry over, other effects. But now with the Kronos, it has like 12 insert effects and 2 multi effects and 2 master effects. There's no problem. all my reverbs, all my delays, everything just carries over. So I could be playing a massive sound of choir, brass, strings, and organ in my left hand, and special effects, all with their own reverbs and chorus and flanging, and then switch, and everything is just beautiful. And of course, the Kronos is the thing that really, works for me on the road. Basically, the way that I use it is I use it in setup mode. So what setup mode is, you have combinations, which are groups of sounds, up to 16 sounds. And then you also have the program area where you can adjust things like filters and LFOs and your oscillators and your waveforms and all that. So once I set up everything and I have all my splits and my layers and my effects assigned, then I put that in a setup mode. So during the course of an evening, like a Dream Theater evening, I literally will have about 500 patches. And I have a pedal that I just cycle through, and I'm playing the show basically from the beginning to end. And I just love that operation. So that's how I use the Kronos. And I also, through the years, have developed many of my own patches. Even besides like sampling, I'll go in and I'll make some like really distorted, really cool sounding rock sounds. I have a whole collection of sounds that I can double, like with John Petrucci. So instead of just like the cool guitar sound he has, all of a sudden it's like batter, or even just guitar. It becomes this like Dream Theater thing. I've got some sounds that have become like signature kind of sounds, like the snarling pig, they call it, which is, it actually has this cool like flangey oscillator sync sound that works really well with the guitar, but there's a whole lot more sounds that are really huge. On the Kronos, like the joystick and the little ribbon, even the fact that the joystick not only goes left and right, but it also goes forward and back. I use that a lot because I have like a signature kind of Jordan lead sound. Very, very important to me. I spent a lot of time working on it. And there's a lot of things that go on in the interaction between moving that joystick and laying my hand, sometimes the side of my finger, on the ribbon while I'm doing it. I can play a lead sound. I can move the pitch, bend the pitch up, and then bring the joystick back a little bit, get some feedback, but also have my hand on the ribbon, which brings in like a little bit of extra sub-octave and maybe even a little bit of distortion at times too. So there's a little bit of a magical formula going on there to make it growl and, feel like almost like a guitar kind of energy, where it's gonna feedback or it's gonna do something that's really kind of cool and rough sounding. What's interesting about that is that on a guitar, when like John Petrucci is playing, it's all about like controlling the beast. Because if you let the guitar go, if just let it go and you don't mute things and be really careful, you could have a lot of noise very, very quickly. So on a keyboard, it's really kind of a different approach. You're actually making the note. You're actively trying to make those sounds. You're not stopping things from happening, you're making things happen. So it's kind of cool because I can make a lot of things happen. Like I have my joystick set to go from the center pit position. If I play a note, I can bend down an octave, and then I have it, so usually I can bend up a whole step. So I can do these kind of almost like whammy slides, or have a lot of flexibility to kind of bend into the notes. And I've kind of over the years gotten good at the equivalent of like somebody who's using a tremolo bar or a whammy bar, going under the note and bringing it back up, and knowing how far you're gonna start from. Like, is it a fourth, a fifth interval, a sixth? All this kind of stuff. All that left hand stuff is very difficult to recreate in like software. I do a lot of things with software, but when it comes to playing a lead, I have to use my Kronos, even in any studio environment, because there's nothing that works like that with that particular interaction. It's really unique, it's really special. I spend a long time on my programming, and even when I'm in the final stages of practicing the music for a tour, I often stop because I feel like, wow, like as I go up in the higher register, maybe I don't want the strings to be so bright. I might be a layer of piano, and I'm always adjusting, tweaking, as they say. Oh, I'll have the strings gently have a curve so they fade out a little bit as I go up higher. Or the EQ is very, very important, because when I'm playing like in Dream Theater, there's a lot of sound. The guitar is as big as this hotel, and I want my keyboard patches to have a place in the mix. So luckily, like in the Kronos, there's a lot of different ways to do EQ. very important thing in the audio world. You know what? I'm playing live, I'm playing against all these guitars and these drums. I need to go into specific frequencies and really give them a boost. So there's a lot of time thinking about that and actually having learned the lesson from all the years I've been doing this about what works for live and what doesn't. Even things like, we play a lot of rooms, some of which are very big. So if I tweak my reverb to have a great sound in my little studio at home, it's probably not a great idea to just accept that. So when I go and I start playing the shows, I'm thinking, well, there's a lot of reverb on my sound, but there's also a lot of reverb in this room, and there's a lot of other instruments. So I'll pull it back and really adjust things. And one other really important thing is because I have so many sounds in an evening, like literally, let's say 500 setups, patches, what I'll do is really go in and make sure all the volumes are in the right spot. I don't want to sit there and be and that's really hard to do because you want things to be dynamic, and maybe a lead sound has to come out a little stronger, or maybe a gentle pad is gonna be a little bit softer. So that placement of where things go is really, really important. Wow. I really just need to make that louder so I don't need to reach over for the volume knob all the time. And maybe just touching the sliders that I use to fade sounds in and out. And that's something in the Kronos that's actually a really nice thing. There's 8 sliders and I can bring things in gradually. And I'll have a sound of a string sound, but then I'll assign a few sliders. So one is bringing in a choir and another one is bringing in some kind of a gentle French horn sound, and I can do that all dynamically. And this is part of our Asian-Australian tour. We're actually about 3 weeks into the tour now. We have 2 more shows here in lovely Seoul before we move on to Japan to finish the leg of the tour. Well, first of all, to the Korean fans, it's been such a pleasure to be here and sharing everything. Everybody's like, okay, bring it to me. I'm there for you. And it's so in the air. The energy is just in the air and you really, really feel it. I was like, wow, everybody was like, this is a great crowd. Honestly, I'm not kidding. We were also happy to be sharing with the fans here. And it's a pleasure to hang out with you guys who are representing the Korg brand. And I look forward to seeing you all on the road again. 안녕.